Well, welcome, folks. Welcome to On This Hill, Podcast Church in the Hill. The boys are back in town.
The boys are back. I'm back. I was gone for 2 weeks. I missed you guys.
Yeah. Actually, though, we had some great conversations
of course.
with Taylor and Mason. They did a
Yeah.
great job. I'm so encouraged by our team. Our team, honestly, is really, really awesome right now.
Yeah.
I think, especially when I look down at the next generation, the
Yeah.
millennials that are on the team.
Yeah.
I'm really impressed by them.
Yeah. I love those guys. If you have a youth, middle school or high school, we got some great pastors working with those kids. It's awesome.
Yeah, and we've been talking about humble God last couple Sundays, and then because it's going to be Christmas, I guess when people hear this, the next Sunday will be Christmas.
Yeah,
Christmas Eve.
it's upon us.
Yeah.
It's upon us.
Yeah, but maybe, so we did two things, though, in the last couple weeks that were really big. The men's breakfast.
Yeah. Yeah, that was cool. Matt McCullum, pastor of Salem Heights, was with us and just brought the word and had some great drop the mic moments. Just about being sons and daughters, adopted. Mm-hmm. What a concept, adopted by God unconditionally.
And what did we call it? Because I can never say what we called that.
Oh, it was kind of unique because Oleg, one of our guys, is a meat specialist, so we called it Christmas Brisket Breakfast. Yeah. Hard to say quickly.
Yeah.
Your lips get tangled
But
up.
I think we had 140 people show up, 140 guys show up for breakfast. Who knew brisket for breakfast would be so popular?
Yeah, I hope that the trend continues. I hope if we have to do brisket every week or every month, either A.
We might kill Oleg because he stays up all night to do it.
We'll break the bank.
Yeah, he slept 2 hours that night.
Yeah.
Man, Matt was awesome. What he shared.
Yeah, great testimony. Just coming out of the drug world and the dysfunctional world of sin. Mm-hmm. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
What a miracle. You know, when people tell their story like Matt did, and they share what their life was like and how their life affected other people's. Mm-hmm. He shared about his wife being a believer and he was miserable and he was making everybody around him miserable and dysfunctional, you know, in every area, finances and your addictions and all this. And then when a man is turned around and he becomes a loving, caring, serving husband and father and all those things. I don't know how people can look at that and not wonder. Yeah. So, hey, what happened? Did you join the gym? Mm-hmm. Did you read a book? Tell me how this happened. And his answer is the resurrection power of Jesus.
Yeah, there's no other like self-help thing that turns a person around that.
Yeah.
And he was calling out, you know, like you need God, the God of the Bible.
Yeah.
Like just a higher power. It's someone you can form into your own image and agrees with you, but the God of the Bible doesn't always agree with you, and you need someone who doesn't always agree with you. That really struck home for me.
Yeah. Isn't that popular, though? I can't help but think how popular that message is today in our culture. And I guess it's kind of obviously it's timeless. You know, all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. But I think more today than ever, there's just no end to to the gurus who have discovered some way to feel better about yourself. But at the end of the day, we need a new heart. We don't just need a new routine. We need a new heart.
Yeah, and I also walked away from that going, when one guy, like you just said, what happens when a guy turns his life over to the Lord?
Yeah.
But when he turned his life over to the Lord, when God got a hold of him, it didn't just change him, it changed his family.
Right.
And then it didn't just change his family, it changed the church.
Yeah.
And it didn't just change the church, it changed the city. It's a different town today because that guy walked in lordship.
Isn't it crazy, the implications of our decisions? You know, someone said, I don't know who it was, ideas have consequences. And the idea of surrendering my life to my Creator and allowing Him to do with my life not just what He wants to do, because that sounds so slavish, but what I was designed to do, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I finally, and here Matt, this guy is up in front of hundreds of men, sharing his story, inspiring them to go and do likewise and be likewise, right?
Yeah.
And the ripple effect of our decisions and our ideas have huge consequences.
Yeah, like a Tim Davis. You know, think of Tim Davis who, like, because he came into the kingdom, you know, and maybe not everyone knows Tim, but he's
one of our former pastors.
Yeah, and you know, has been a part of Church on the Hill here for a long time. But he's still a part of Church on the Hill. But he started another ministry, and that ministry has changed the city.
Yeah, mentoring ministry, Valor Mentoring, the Rec Community Center, and hundreds and hundreds of lives are touched as a result of one man deciding, I'm going to submit my life to my Creator.
Yeah. The other event we did recently that maybe is worth bragging about a little bit was for us just last night that Lauren, our women's ministry leader, our women's pastor, she had a dessert banquet at the mill.
Yeah.
And I think it was 270, I think, 260, 270 women
Pieces
came.
of cheesecake.
Yeah, there was a lot.
There was a lot of cheesecake.
There's a lot of cheesecake. There's a lot of. I never got a piece. Did you get a piece?
No, I didn't get a piece.
I
We helped set up, but we didn't get anything.
Yeah, women's ministry.
Come on.
Help us out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool to see that and the contrast between men's ministry and women's ministry because men's ministry, if you were there on that Saturday morning, we all ate at cafeteria tables.
And we had napkins.
We did have paper napkins.
We had napkins.
No tablecloths, no anything, just like literally just cafeteria tables. Here's your piece of meat, go sit down.
Yeah.
Here's your piece of meat, go sit down. And the women's ministry, I mean, I hauled trailers full of stuff there to decorate a room.
Yeah, dainties. I was hanging snowflakes.
Snowflakes hanging from the ceiling, putting together Christmas trees and string, all this stuff.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful. They did a bang up job. Yeah.
Isn't it crazy? We're in the Christmas season, and we've been talking about the humility of God and this idea of the incarnation, the concept, the truth that somehow God had to be made like unto His creation.
Yeah.
It says in Psalms, it says, "What is man that you're mindful of him? The Son of Man that you care about him. You've made him a little lower than the angels." And so, this idea that even Jesus, the Son of God, was incarnated a little lower than the angels.
Yeah.
So he swapped positions. He comes from a place of being higher than the angels to being a little lower than the angels, not to have bragging rights, but to actually have access.
Yeah.
And we could have access to Him. And through that access, our hearts could be changed. And like we were saying earlier, not just our hearts, but that changed heart ripples into family. This idea of God in the flesh, God's Spirit.
One of the key verses for this Sunday is Philippians 2, 5 through 11. And part of it says, He emptied Himself, taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men. That He emptied Himself, the correct, common, theology would say, He didn't empty Himself of His godness. He was still God.
Yeah.
He emptied Himself of His glory. So all the glory that was due Him, His glorified form. Because there are times in the Old Testament when you see someone like the Son of God show up, like in the book of Daniel, in the fiery furnace, or other times where it says the angel of the Lord appeared, and people speculate, well, that was probably the Son of God, but He didn't have that name yet. He was the angel of the Lord, and when He shows up, everything changes because the glory is there, and you can't look at the glory of God and live, so people end up falling on their face. But when Jesus showed up, people didn't even have to put on sunglasses. He'd emptied Himself of the glory. He could just
you could walk right past Him.
You could walk right past Him.
You wouldn't know.
Yeah, Isaiah says that he wasn't even particularly good looking.
Yeah.
Which I know this is but I always wonder, like when Isaiah got to heaven, if Jesus didn't be like, hey, why you do me like that? Why you have to tell people I'm... I mean, that's a prophecy. It's way off in the future, but I always think it's funny that Isaiah said, well, he wasn't even particularly good looking.
Yeah. Can you imagine if some star, like, I don't know, pick one, Taylor Swift said, I'm going to stop by one of your services on Sunday, or Bono, or even a government figure, the president.
It would change everything.
Everybody would move their schedules. Everybody would find the nearest seat to the front. Everybody would be, kind of, preening to be in the picture.
They'd be blocking roads. They'd be
And here, the most important figure in all of history shows up, and he shows up in a backwater town and to a relatively obscure family, really obscure family, really. And with the only announcements are blue collar shepherds and then some angels, right? But God
funny.
is content.
I never thought about it like that, but that's 100% true.
Yeah, and He's just content in His greatness. He's content in who He is. He doesn't have anything to prove or anything, any points to win. That's
humility. That's real humility.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to prove anything.
I don't have to prove.
I was just, when you said that, I was thinking, I'm pretty sure the first instance I can think of Jesus showing up as an adult in the temple, he read from the scroll of Isaiah.
Yeah, teenage boy.
And he says, today this is fulfilled. And then they try to throw him off they run him out of town, try to throw him off a cliff.
Oh, right.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, very different response
Yeah.
than if Taylor Swift had come to our Sunday service. Yeah.
The show. When I said teenage, I thought you were referring to the place where he was got lost from his parents, and he was found in the temple, and he was dialoguing with people, and they said, where did he learn this stuff? You know, and the mom wondered, you know, when they finally found him after those days, and they discovered he was gone from the caravan, right?
Yeah.
And find him there in the temple, and he said, listen, I'm about my Father's business. And they wondered, like, who, you know, you can imagine that's your son. You still don't really know as a parent exactly who this young man Jesus is, right? Or what he's about to do.
It's been, 12 years since the angel told me something about him.
Yeah.
And I've just raised a kid.
Yep. Yeah,
I'm just raising a kid.
Yep, living the life. We're living the mundane, everyday life.
Yeah,
right?
that's what struck me in preparing for this message is how mundane everything was, how normal everything was, and yet a miracle takes place. And even the length of how mundane it was, that there was 400 years since the last prophet, 400 years. And I'm not saying God was not at work, but I think if you would have, if you could have done a man on the street interview with any of the people of Palestine that day and said, do you see a miracle? Are you expecting a miracle? Or they'd say, the age of miracles is over. Elijah was a great miracle guy, man. We remember him in our stories. Moses, man, there was deliverance back there, and then and miracles. But now, I mean, if we want anything done, we're going to have to do it ourselves. If we're going to overthrow, Rome, we're going to have to
come by the power of the sword.
We're going to need a sword. We're going to need. There's no waters being parted. There's no plagues falling on Rome. If anything, it feels like they're falling on us. And yet the miracle takes place, and it just gives me hope that so many days just feel normal and mundane to me, like I shouldn't expect a miracle.
Yeah, isn't it funny how faith? 400 years is a long time. That's probably our country. If you're listening and you're in the United States, we've only been around about 250 years, right? And you can imagine 400 years of holding on and to promises, holding on to prophecies, holding on to Isaiah 53, holding on to Isaiah 9. Some of those prophecies. But what does that faith look like? I don't think the mundane is popular with us, right? We chafe at the mundane. We love excitement. We love pop and fizz and the mundane is hard in the sense of holding on to your faith. But in the New Testament, you see a few people were holding on. Simeon, Anna, waiting for the consolation of Israel, waiting.
And those are both of value. What do you ever call it? The grind. The disciplines of just, no, I've not seen a miracle, but I get up every morning.
Yeah.
I praise my God. I'm faithful in my work. I'm loving in my family. I'm in the Word of God. I'm serving the body of Christ. That would be mundane, relatively mundane.
Yeah. The everyday things.
Loving my family might be as simple as mowing the lawn, taking care of the bills, just super mundane. And that is of such great value. But if you never also believe for the miracles, and God can break out of the mundane and give me something I was not expecting, something I didn't earn.
It's funny how we can, in a sense, almost negotiate with God with our faith, As long as you keep showing me, I'll remain faithful. But really, the faithful people were the ones who said, even Job, though he slay me, yet will I trust him.
Right.
Habakkuk, who said, listen, though there be no grapes on the vine, though there be no sheep in the field, I'm still going to praise the Lord. I'm paraphrasing, but basically these guys that said, I don't need a miracle to believe. My faith is grounded in something more than the sensational.
All of Hebrews 11.
Yeah. Yeah,
all
died
people who look
having
forward
not
to.
seen the promises.
Yeah. There was an expectation, but not yet a fulfillment. I think about that with Elijah all the time. The disappointment that he felt after, one of his greatest miracles, and the defeat of another god, but then he just falls into this deep depression. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even,
I love the way, sorry.
no, even the New Testament, how many people were disappointed because Jesus didn't keep doing the miracles the way they liked. And after the bread, the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus said, you guys are just here for the bread. You're fascinated by this, and it's exciting, but the bread of life is right here, standing next to you.
Yeah, I love the Kilpatricks. They've been amazing elders here, for a long time. And when you go and if you ask for prayer for them, if you're looking for a miracle, and you're doing what the Scripture says, gathering elders together and asking for prayer. I've heard Karen especially say, lots of times. Sometimes God will do a little by little, and sometimes He'll do it all at once. And she'll just be seeking, God, are you wanting to do an all at once and, solve a problem here and heal somebody or whatever the miracle is?
Yeah.
Or are you going to do a little by little? And I just think about that. Like a lot of our day is little by little. My discipleship progress is pretty much little by little.
Yeah.
But then sometimes God will kind of give you a revelation.
Yeah.
He'll kind of step in.
Yeah.
And if you'll walk in the light of that, then you have to treat that little by little and walk in the light of it. But a lot of my discipleship in my life has been, okay, if you talk about in terms of sobriety, I have 2 days sober, I have 3 days sober, I have 10 days sober, I have, whatever it is.
One step at a time.
Yeah. But then there's the deliverance too.
Yeah.
The deliverances, the miracles that take place.
But isn't that, I just think about how that, in so many ways, is the mark of maturity in an individual or a disciple, right? That the mark of immaturity, the mark of a child is they want it now, and when they can't have it, as a toddler, they throw a fit or they cry because they want what they want it now. But the mark of maturity is we've learned that life doesn't happen the way we like it to all the time when we want it. And sometimes waiting is a part of life. In fact, sometimes waiting is things happen in the waiting that would never happen in the actual delivery, right?
Yeah. I'm going to forget who the quote is from, but who said, hurry isn't of the devil.
Hurry is the devil. Yeah, I think it was John Ortberger. I think he got it from Dallas Willard. But you think about, anything good always involves kind of I read once where a guy was describing the respiratory system of our bodies, where our bodies are in and out all day long. We breathe out carbon dioxide and waste. We breathe in oxygen and good things, right? And so it keeps us, that's a rhythm that God has put in our lives. And so if you were to take that and look at other things, whether that's an education goal or whether that's the building of a home, if you look at it, there's things, if you were to take a video of it, you see that people are going away from the goal and then they're coming back to the goal. The guys go home at night and then they come back in the morning. The student goes to school in the morning. So it's part of our nature, right? Don't you think it's like there's a place of withdrawing, there's a place of slowing down, and it's all part of the rhythm of our lives. We can't live with the RPMs at, 9,000.
I love it. I've never thought of that picture before. It's a beautiful picture. Like if you were to take a time lapse and you would then see the rhythm.
Yeah. Like if you own the house, let's just say you own the house, or you were having the house built and you were the owner paying him the money, and you sent one of your guys to take a bunch of pictures. What if he just took pictures of the guys getting in the truck or just sitting in the truck having lunch?
Yeah.
Well, those lazy bunch of people, they're not working on their house. Actually, they are.
Yeah.
They're taking a break or they're going home,
Yeah.
or the hammer's running away from the nail in order to come back to the nail. But when you see the video, you see the bigger picture, right? You see the whole thing. And someday I think we're going to see the video. And we see that going away as wasted time.
Yeah, I feel like even from what I understand, it's not in my history, but from reading history, that it took industry a while to figure out, we have to give people breaks.
Yeah.
Like it'll feel like we're paying someone to take a half-hour lunch.
Yeah.
But
the productivity has been proven
Yeah.
goes up across the board.
Yeah, if you'll let them have a coffee break, they will come back and get more done than if they never had a break.
And that's God's idea, right? That's not Henry Ford's idea or whoever. That's God's idea.
Because Henry Ford and other industrials tend to just treat people like cogs. Then they come to a realization is they're not machines, they're humans and have to be treated as such. And when treated humanely, then actually they prosper. And because if they prosper, then I prosper. Capitalism.
But it speaks to our design, doesn't it? I mean, the Sabbath idea speaks to our design. Sleep is mundane. Rest sometimes feels mundane. Feels like we're not accomplishing anything.
Yeah, yeah.
But
And
God
when you're
knew
in,
something.
it reminds me of like when you're in love. When I was young and not yet married, but deeply in love with Trisha, the partying just felt like no.
Yeah.
If there's a time where I was living in Portland and she was here in Salem, and I'd come to see her as often as I could, spend all my money on gas and all my money on her because that's what I loved. I loved her. I didn't love what I was doing in Portland. I loved her. And to have to go home at night was just like, oh, the bar, I don't want to leave. But there was this, and in the presence of God, even there's this, I don't want to leave here. Something Taylor said when he was here. We were talking about worship and how when I first came, I guess when I was really first in ministry and I was figuring things out, I honestly felt like worship was almost a waste. Like, let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to the message. Let's get to the stuff that, grows me. And it took time to get over that and realize, oh no, there's so much happening in worship. And that now if worship goes long or takes over the service, I'm like, well, that was a great Sunday then. If really what we got to was the heart of worship. Yeah. And he was describing how, like, you need both though. If all you did was worship and you never then went to the Word, you'd be immature. In a sense, your brain would be immature. You'd be immature. If you only ever went to the Word and you never went to worship, there'd be a different kind of immaturity. There'd be an immaturity there, and you need to go from one to the other.
It just speaks so much to our design that we're emotional beings, we're intellectual beings, we're physical beings, and all those composite design of our lives is all blended together. It's inseparable. It's like part of the same cloth, and yet this God in His wisdom said, "Listen, you're gonna need all that. You're gonna need the exciting. You're gonna need the mundane. You're gonna need the rest. You're gonna need the action."
Yeah.
And if we go against that, I think it was it Pascal who said that most of man's ills can be traced back to his inability to be alone in a room with himself. And so this idea of solitude.
And he'd not seen anything yet.
Yeah.
He could just see us today.
Yeah. The inability to be alone in a room with ourselves. Something like that, I'm paraphrasing. But just this idea of idling down. Christmas is a time of a lot of activity, right? I mean, we feel it, church life and so forth, and then family, and then needs and all kinds of things. It just never seems, but it seems to accelerate, that's just part of the package. But it doesn't matter who we are. It doesn't matter what culture or nationality or where we come from. Everybody needs to idle down and just and kind of just breathe in what we would call back to the mundane, right? The day-to-day things.
Maybe we can wrap up on this last point or question. Maybe a lot of what we talked about on Sunday would have been how he joined or he participated in our mundane. Like, he didn't just stand off of it and say, "Here's how to do that." Like a foreman or someone who doesn't get out of the truck, but yells at you from the truck. You're doing it wrong. Yeah. You're doing it wrong. Yeah. But he came and grabbed a hammer. Yeah. And participated in life with us. And of course, that makes you think about the community, the church, and participation. And what does that look like? Are you joining? Are you visiting? Or are you joining? Are you married to? Or are you dating? Are you truly adopted? Or are you just coming over for dinner? I'm just curious. What are your thoughts on that? On you've had years of pastoral ministry. What's the difference between someone who joins? You just say joins the church, really joins the church. Obviously maybe goes through class and says, "Yeah, I'm on the roll," but they're not just on the roll, but they're participating in the church versus the visitor. How do you pastor a church that might be half full of visitors or 3/4 full of visitors?
That's such a huge question, but I think the casting of the vision, for what we beat the drum. You and I beat the drum incessantly for the idea of deep community and authentic community, because in authentic community, like a healthy family, there are certain rhythms. Again, a healthy family, people are going to work, kids are going to school. That's just part of life. But there's another side of the coin where they share one another's needs. They care of one another. They celebrate together. They know each other's lives. The parents or the mom and the dad, they're at Johnny's recital or Susie's game, and there's a home life where there's a refuge, if you will, from all the other outside elements. And I think church somehow can be and should be that to some degree, where you slow down enough to know and to be known, right? You slow down enough to let someone inside of your life, or perhaps enter into the life of another, and you share the good and the bad. Yeah. I just think there's something there that is incredibly life-giving. It reminds me, I have a good friend who is well known in the music industry. He's a professional musician. He's on the road a good chunk of his life. And his life on the road is in front of adoring crowds.
Right, yeah.
Everybody knows him.
Yeah.
Endless press conferences and after parties and pre-parties and applause and the show goes on. And he said to me, and when I come home, I can't do normal life. I come home, he said, and I crash and I burn in the day-to-day mundane things of life. I mean, in a very serious way. He's not talking about he just gets depressed. He has some serious issues because he can't cope, because he's been on a steady diet for 20-some years of the praise and the noise and the lights and so forth. And I just think that's a tragedy, because normal life is where we experience real life.
Right.
That life on the stage, that's artificial life.
Yeah.
I mean, it's real for them in the moment, but at the end of your life, at the end of your days, you're not wishing for more lights. You're wishing for authenticity. You're wishing for real relationships.
Man. Yeah. And I think the real is the part. Like, how do we do that at church, at community? Like, how do we join into the real and not just come for the, I don't know, the pretty music.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm really
just the experience of the moment.
Yeah. I think the early church wouldn't have, or the persecuted church of today wouldn't recognize sometimes a church where people come to be served. Like, come expecting, well, I've done a risk-benefit analysis of joining this church, and it seems like you have the most to offer, and I'm here to be served.
Yeah, total consumer mindset.
I think the early church or the persecuted church of today wouldn't recognize that as church. They'd say that was something else, that was consumer-driven, but not church.
I think that's why people who are ex-military and things like that, or ex-law enforcement, have such a struggle with something, perhaps a church that is superficial, because they're used to deep relationships where their lives depended on one another. They sacrificed for one another. They fought together. They lived together, and that was the context that was necessary at the time. But I just think there's something incredibly attractive about a group of people that will give their lives for one another.
Yep. Yeah, and why I think the small group of people from a local church who go on a missions trip together come back so different. Yeah. Because
it's like a snapshot.
Yeah. They've really participated in, not just been served by, but participated in the work of Christ. And the pressure was on them in lots of different ways, cultural and other. And they come back bonded to one another and bonded to the word in a way that you don't by just attending something. Yeah. Well, it's nice to have you back.
It's good to be back, I think.
Yeah. Glad to have you back.
December.
So when people are listening to this now, it would be, if you're listening to it right away, the next Sunday would be Christmas Eve service. So we'll have Christmas Eve services at the South Campus at 8:30.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
9:45.
9:45 and 11:30. Thank you.
Yeah.
8, 9:45, and 11:30. And then at the Kaiser Campus, 9:45 and 11:30.
Yeah.
And it's a great service. If you've come to our normal Christmas Eve services, which isn't normally on Sunday night, but is just one of the weeknights, depending on what year it is, it'll be like that, but in the morning.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we want to give our volunteers a break to be with their families on Christmas Eve once every 7 years.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, love you guys. Thanks for listening. Please share this with people. Hopefully it'll be a blessing to them, and come visit us on Sunday.
Take some time to slow down. It's good for the soul.
All right. See ya.
Take care.